Aloha, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited that you've joined us today. This is Georgia Skinner from Creative Industries Division for the state of Hawaii, welcoming you to our Creative Lab Hawaii Wāhine in Filmmaking seminar. We're very happy to have you here today and have an amazing group of women who I've had the pleasure of working with one way or another in my time here in Hawaii. As one of the first female sound mixers in network television, what's important to me is to see the growth of our industry, especially our women who are doing fantastic work and getting recognized globally for the impacts they have. So first of all, want to thank Michael Palmieri, the head of our Creative Lab program here in Hawaii, for the media side. This year we've done mostly virtual programs, and it's been very exciting, covering new things like playwriting, indigenous narrative, and VR and AR storytelling. So let's get started. First, I'd like to introduce someone who's really important here in our state and who's done amazing work and celebrating their 10th anniversary, the person that's in charge of the vision and the implementation of Hawaii Women in Filmmaking. I'd love to have you join me in welcoming Vera Zambonelli. And Vera has done tremendous work. She has been a filmmaker. She is a doctorate, which I'm just jealous of because she is such a brilliant mind and really cares deeply about nurturing our women filmmakers from a very young age to a very older age like me. So all of us are a part of a huge community here. And what's important to us is to say that, you know, whether it's a filmmaker doing narrative or documentary storytelling, you're going to hear from the experts today on what they have done and how that can implement in your own story yourselves. So look at it through your own lens, ask questions. I know that you'll enjoy it. And now I'd like to introduce Vera Zambonelli.
Mahalo, Georgia. Mahalo nui for your kind words. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for all you do. And thank you for hosting this amazing panel. And in a moment, I will introduce the panelists, though I just want to spend a few minutes just to share with you a little bit about how the webinar will run. Our conversation with our panelists will last approximately 40 to 45 minutes, which will leave us about 15 minutes for questions from our viewers. And if you are interested in asking any questions, please do use the Q&A options here on the Zoom. And you can do that as the webinar unfolds. We'll make sure that we answer as many as we can by the end of this webinar. And yes, because we will choose from the queue and answer as many as time allows. And we hope we have a lot of questions from you all. So let me introduce one by one the panelists for today. So starting with Anne Misawa. Anne has worked internationally in various aspects of film productions, primarily as producer, director, and cinematographer. Credits include Waking Mele, Eden's Curve, I Was Simple Man, Go for Brock, Story Game, and Margarita with a Straw. Anne is currently an associate professor at the Academy for Creative Media, University of Hawaii at Mānoa, where she teaches cinematic production. And this will be like a virtual A on you, Anne. Let me introduce you, native Hawaiian filmmaker Erin Lau is a University of Hawaii Academy for Creative Media alum who completed her MFA in directing at Chapman University. Good job. She is a Sundance Native Lab Fellow for her film The Moon and the Night, screened in numerous competitions, international film festivals, and broadcast networks. Currently, Erin works as a producer-director for Jubilee Media, creating digital content and videos for brands, including Google and Netflix. Then let me welcome Heather Haunani Giugni, who has produced and directed numerous projects, including documentaries, television series, and live broadcast events. Her work has been nominated multiple times for an Emmy and winning one for her series called Family Ingredient. She is a founding member of Pacific Islanders in Communications and Ulu Ulu, Hawaii Moving Image Archive, and is also an adjunct faculty member of the Academy for Creative Media at UH West Oahu. Last but not least, let's welcome Shirley Thompson. Is a veteran documentary editor, writer, producer, and story consultant, best known for the documentary that she edits. Most recently, Sabi, Kukanaka, Finding Kukan, Winning Girls, and Beijing, the Voice of Hawaii. Shirley has co-produced and edited the web documentary series Crossing Space, and as a Latina and daughter of immigrants, she is committed to filmmaking that builds bridges across cultures and community. And I would like to add that all of us, all 5 of us are actually currently involved with the production of Real Wahine of Hawaii Season 3, which is a series of short documentary spotlighting the lives and accomplishment of Hawaii women filmmakers. So that's also how we are all connected in this panel as well. So this is just the bio introduction. What I would like to invite each of you is actually to share how long have you been working in the industry and what originally drew into this field? And so if each of you can just share briefly, maybe starting with Erin, and then we go to Anne.
Yeah, I guess you could technically say I've been on film sets and doing this since I was 17. So 11 years now. And Craigslist music videos, internships, day playing as a PA, and now producing. So I've done a wide range, but I ended up going into film because initially, actually, my family is in the music industry, but I couldn't play an instrument to save my life. So they gave me the camera and said, you can film the concerts instead. But what was wonderful about that is it introduced me to the form. And I found that film was my way to express myself in the process, difficult experiences, relationships, and so on. And I've been attached to it ever since.
Excellent. Thank you, Erin. And would you like to share with us how long have you been working and what drew you originally to this field?
Sure. I think that professionally, I've been working in film for about 25 years now. And what first drew me to it was, I think, it was complete instinct, because truthfully, before I went to film school, I had never made a film. So, and this was at a time when we worked with the film format. So things were not accessible to us as readily. But at that time, I was studying creative writing, poetry at New York University. I was getting a master's. And I was trying to make a decision about whether to continue along the poetry field, which is basically to get a PhD and be an English teacher, because very few poets make money off of their poetry, right? And I thought this is a great opportunity to try something different. And I've always been a very visual thinker, and my instincts were that there was something possible with cinema that was similar to poetry in terms of being able to, communicate on a level that you can't quite pinpoint, but everything is working together to convey something quite magical to you. So it was a complete jump.
And I'm glad you made that jump. We all are.
Thanks.
And Shirley, or Heather, would you like to share how long have you worked in the industry and what drew you originally into this field?
Even though Shirley is going to be, last, I think, in this discussion, unless Vera, you shared, I think I got you all beat in terms of the length of time, but it was a very, very long time ago, before the internet was even created, but not as far back as when the dinosaurs walked the earth. So. But I mean, I got involved as a kid watching my mom. She had a camera, Super 8. And at the time we lived on the East Coast in DC, and she documented some crazy stuff, she documented like the burning of DC in 1968 and all of these incredible things that historically that were going on. And I was fascinated by her love of it. I watched it. I think I just took it on and ended up going into journalism, and then getting an internship in a newsroom here with Bob CV, KGMB News in the 70s, and just loved the inside of a television station. It was like the inside of a video game. In those days it was a pinball machine. And so I just loved all things about it, every aspect about it. And the empowering of the message came a little bit later. And so that's about where I started, and that was smitten back then. And I didn't know exactly what my future was going to be in this. I knew that that I wanted to do something in television, and that eventually led to storytelling. And I was just very fortunate, just being mentored by the right people at the right time, and being here in Hawaii.
Excellent, Heather. Shirley, would you like to share how long did you work and what drew you to this field?
38 glorious years in the biz. I started off in college as a radio DJ, and editing was required of all of us because we had to edit our promos for our shows. And so I started editing literally cutting a reel-to-reel audio tape with a razor blade and taping it together with tape. So that's how far back my history in the film biz goes. And then from there, I thought I was going to be a journalist. So I really looked up to, the really famous reporters of the day, Diane Sawyer and Andrea Martin. And I just wanted to be, in front of the camera. And then I started writing more, and I started producing, and I really realized and have found a love for technology and working with equipment and using cameras to do that kind of behind the scenes storytelling. And I got less interested in being in front of the camera and more interested in being behind the camera. And so from audio production to video production, and then from television to making long form documentary films.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Thank you so much for answering this question, which actually is also why we have this panel organized the way we have and advertise with the writing that this is a time and space for us with all this wealth of knowledge and experience developed through the years. We are here to share with you the best practices or tips or what we all have learned based on our experience, and possibly that you will find useful to make a career in film as a woman filmmakers, to get hired, to keep working in the industry. So actually the very first question I would like to ask to Anne, and somehow it's kind of situating us at the very beginning of someone that is thinking, shall I or shall I not? So because it's always like sometimes it's just a vision, but sometimes you don't know exactly what it entails, right? So based on your experience, what advice would you have for someone who's considering entering this industry and someone that wants to get started in it?
Sure. I mean, I kind of know that my own sort of experience it was a complete jump, but I remember the moment when I felt like it was possible. And it was because I was in New York, and I saw a couple of films that completely inspired me. And one was My Own Private Idaho, which I still love.
Yeah.
And the other was a very sort of like experimental film that was showing at the Film Forum, which I can't pronounce, but basically in English is called The Angel. And it was a film that was comprised of multiple layers of optical printed material. And then when I saw both of those films, I was like, I can do this. This form could work for me, meaning that there's areas of filmmaking that filmmakers are willing to stretch what's conventionally been done. And I think that's the first step, kind of, is to really think about, is there anything that you watch that you're inspired by or you're curious by? And to try and pay attention to that, to tap into that and see, well, how does that resonate with yourself, right? Is there something you want to say? Is there something you feel is important to do? Is there a style that you gravitate towards? And then the next step, I guess, is to try to connect, meaning the great thing is that right now there's so many opportunities to connect with other filmmakers, like the Hawaii Filmmakers Collective, or going through, women in filmmaking, or going through the academic route if you go to ACM or, somewhere else to study. there's ways to connect with other filmmakers. And I think that's the next step, is to try to make those connections, try to make those friends. And then I think you figure out how you want to start participating, whether it's to volunteer on projects or to really, for me, I had no connections in film. So actually the academic way was the only way for me that I saw, because I had no connections. So I think now there's a lot of opportunities. One can get one's feet wet without having to commit to 4 years in school, you know? So, although that's a great way to do it too. To be able to have the luxury to be able to focus on that, you know, discipline. But I think the first thing is to try to recognize what inspires oneself, really.
Yeah, and finding that aesthetics and then the connection.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
figuring out what's the journey.
Right.
Okay, so for someone that then decide to get into it, Heather, based on your experience, once again, because this is based on our lived experience as filmmakers, would you identify any skill, abilities, or personal attributes that you would advise that someone that wants to enter as well, stay in the industry, to develop?
In terms of hard skills, if you're seriously interested in pursuing this vocation, it's best you know what you're getting into through education or training, which equals internship. So in terms of hard skills, you should know the landscape and choose one aspect that appeals to you most, find a mentor, take a class or get a degree, and hone in your skills, you know, figure out what you want to do and get good at it so that you are noticed, right? So you want to be that good so that people call on you, and as they call on you, you get more and more experience. I mean, I can tell you stories over and over again of how people who work really hard really rise. So that's just, you know, it's just true in everything you do, right? But this field is heartbreaking. It's fulfilling, but it's also heartbreaking. So you have to be aware of the pitfalls and know that you can do whatever you want to do. You just have to work really, really hard at it. In terms of the soft stuff, I think you're talking about personality, maybe. I'm not sure what soft stuff means exactly, but you know, obviously
communication or you know.
Well, you have to know. I mean, you know, the power in connections and knowing people and getting to know people without being obnoxious. You know, is also the key to success, right? The old saying here in Hawaii, you know, it's a who you know, it's a relationships, and then that turns into politics, right? So that is the source of everything that is your or could be your success, right? I mean, even awards is politics, right? Everything is. You have to campaign for everything. You have to be out there, and when you have a message to sell, you have to win over people that support you. But the bottom line is you have to love what you do, and I think everybody here is extremely passionate about what they do, and that is where the success lies. Because you can always find that avenue, that pathway, that mentor to get to where you want to go. It's your distractions that will trip you up.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So growing from the hard skill to the soft skills and connections, you know, as you said. And this is actually a question that I would like to ask to Erin. Would you have, based on your experience, the like disclaimer always, any advice actually on how to network and meet those filmmakers that can actually help you advance your career?
Yeah, I think the first, I want to go back to a little bit of what Anne was saying about, I think your why. Why are you doing this? What is attracting you to this space? Especially, as Heather said, a heartbreaking industry. I think when you're first starting out, just meeting people is important, but there's going to have to come a point that you look for the people who share your why, who share your values, who are pursuing the same types of stories and drive that you are, because my dad will love that I'm saying this, but he told me for years, and I finally get it, that you want to be around people you want to be like, and people that share your values for the world. And so I think that is one thing to keep in mind, and to kind of shift the context of looking for people who will advance your career. I would almost be mindful of not looking at it that way. You're looking for people to have genuine relationships with. I think if you go in and like, I'm going to be friends with this cool person because they could get me to my next job, that you're already doing yourself a disservice, because people can smell BS and like lack of genuine interest. And so I think the first thing to do is just come from a place of like, I want to build a relationship with this person, and maybe there will be a lot there for us personally that we connect on that will then maybe lead to more, if not at least a good relationship. It's not only who you know, it's how you know them and how much nurturing you've put into that relationship. And so I think that's like the foundational thing to embrace. And then from there, abandon all ego. go to mixers. Film school did build my closest film community for me. Like, everyone who's worked on a majority of my projects went through ACM with me, and we've all moved to LA now. So we continue to work with each other and spend our Sundays hanging out with each other. So there's a lot of spaces for it. There's a lot of fun, whether it's Creative Lab or Hawaii Women in Film, there's a lot of opportunities, but then start to ask yourself, how do I nurture these relationships, and how do I treat them with meaning? Is kind of the first place my gut goes.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the insight, which actually is a great segue to Shirley's advice that I would like to ask. So let's say we started these connections from an authentic place of interest. And then at the same time, how do we promote ourselves for what we do and what we would like to do? Would you have any advice on how we can do that the best, or in a way that, promote us without sounding too obnoxious, as Heather said?
Yeah, I think that, this is also a very, I think, a gendered question, in that I think it's women are taught. As a Latina who was raised in the South, I was taught that being humble was the most important thing for me, and to not toot my own horn, but to step back and let other people, have the spotlight. And so it was a learned thing that I had to learn, that sometimes there's a moment, and when that moment happens where someone asks you, so what's your story? What are you working on? You need to be ready to tell people who you are, what your interests are, and what you're about, and what you want, And so you really need to do whatever it is that you need to do inside yourself to build yourself up and learn how to speak about yourself with a certain amount of sort of just pride in your own work. And think of yourself as sort of the advocate for the business person that is you, right? I sort of separate myself, Shirley Thompson, from Shirley Thompson Editorial, which is my business. And there are things I could never ask for me, Shirley Thompson, but for Shirley Thompson Editorial, there's this business, and that business needs an advocate. Somebody speak up for it and speak out for it and do the social media for it and build the website for it and make sure that my LinkedIn page is up to date and all those networking things. Show up at the event, talk about it. It's like, no one's going to do that for Shirley Thompson Editorial except for me, right? So somehow separating, there's this business entity and this business that needs advocacy, and that I can do it for the business, and because no one else is going to do that, right? So it is about sort of owning the real estate online, having a website. If you Google me, you're going to find me really fast, because I've built up a social media presence, a web presence. I make myself very easy to find, my website is shirleythompson.com. So it's like Shirley Thompson on Facebook, Shirley Thompson on Twitter. So it's like, so I've over years have sort of been building up these sort of networking type assets so that they're in place. So it's really easy for me to communicate with people virtually. And then again, it comes back to personal relationships, right? So it's like it's what I always say is that people like to work with people that they know, like, and trust. And so it comes back to just sort of building relationships over time. And so you have to put yourself in those places where the people that you want to work with, where they are also, where they hang out, and so how can you put yourself in those rooms so that you can get to know them and find out what you have in common and find out how you can be helpful to them. Because that's another way that I always look at it is like, how can I be helpful to this person? How can I help them move their goals forward? And where is it that their goals and what they, strive to do and what my goals, where do those things intersect? Right. So that then we can work together.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing this, Shirley, which also makes me think about, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is also mentorship, right? It's how you can be, supporting someone else and how you can be supported from someone else. And Heather, based on your experience, what advice would you give to someone that is really looking to get a mentor, but also be a mentor for someone else?
Well, if I was watching this, whether I was a senior or a high school student or anything in between, I would definitely hook everybody up here as mentors. Seriously, I mean, and then, I really believe every student, young person should have mentors growing up. And I'm talking about like a dozen mentors. And I'm talking about people that celebrity types that you can't even imagine that they would even respond to you. But, all of those, I think of leadership people around the world as mentors, as well as, somebody who is, younger than you. I mean, you can learn so much from so many people. And in this industry, that is how we learn. And I didn't go to film school. I learned in the trenches, and I feel very sisterly with Shirley on this. We learned in the radio stations and the television stations, and it was all boys clubs, and we had to observe. We're very good observers and copied everything that they did because it was a time where there was no instruction of how to do it, for women. That just wasn't in anybody's mind.
And no women role models either.
No women role models. And no men had ever thought that a woman could do something like that in so many instances. And so you had to really push yourself, be courageous. Like Shirley said, you had to speak up for yourself because nobody was going to speak up for you. And then they go, oh, yeah, duh. And so then, that's how you kind of get into it. And so, what I did when I was a younger person, I would identify just like who was really, really good in the TV station, because in those days, the cameramen were the filmmakers. They shot in 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter, that's how the news was done back in the day, and before videotape was even created. And so they were filmmakers. They were pretty brilliant with the camera and shooting a scene and telling a story. And so that is, I watched them and I learned from them. And then, I access you guys here, I'm always like, socializing, which is also a time for me to, get some downloading and exchanging of ideas, working in the community, like it's been said here, is a really rich opportunity. Georgia has really opened up many opportunities for us to do incredible things. Donnie Dawson's out there that's very supportive of us and what we do. I can go on and on and on about what we have now, which we didn't have before. I mean, the Academy for Creative Media did not exist. For me, my film school was at night at the TV station when all the bosses were away. And all the technology was ours to play with and to pump out our stories. So that mentorship is something that everyone should have and do and line up, because there are always people out there to learn from. But you have to sometimes be aggressive about that to get the kind of person you want, because there are a lot of people out there. So sorry, just started babbling, but there you go.
Be sorry. No, it's fantastic, because actually, what we are doing here with all these advices is like, okay, you are entering the industry, how you stay in the industry, you make connections, you build authentic relationship. And we are really in a very rich and abundant time for the creative industry here in Hawaii. And now there is a lot of work that needs to be done and a lot of work that we can do. And this has actually brought me a question for Anne. So let's say that, it can work this both ways, like either you offer or you want to go on a project. How do you actually, what is your process or advice, like, to someone that, wants to work on a project, but is not sure? I mean, do you have like a process, any advice on how to actually choose the project that you eventually work on based on what you learn?
Yeah, and I think I need to acknowledge the different reasons why we work, right? One is to pay the rent or the mortgage, whatever it is, pay one's bills. And that is it is a very important thing. But I would encourage, when we have the luxury to think beyond that, is to consider what Erin, what Shirley, what Heather has mentioned so far about who do we want to work with that might align with what we heart-wise or, feel connected with. And so surrounding oneself with that kind of community, hopefully will somehow generate work that will pay the bills in the long run. For me, because I also have, I'm able to some extent cherry pick, right? I've been very fortunate enough to be able to do that. That I really look at the story. If it's as a cinematographer coming to a story, or if it's from the producing directing side generating the story, I'm really looking at is there something in the story that I can connect with, and also not only thinking in terms of like, if I'm coming on board to another project, like not only thinking about, the first thought of like, oh, what can the project bring to me? But really, what can I offer the project? Like, is there something that I can offer the project? And I truly believe there's the right crew for each story. And sometimes that crew is not me. And I'll turn it down because of that. I'll be pretty upfront with it that, I might actually connect with the filmmakers, but there's something about the story that's I'm just not connecting with. And I know that there's somebody out there who will. And the project deserves a crew that, can nurture it in that way. I totally believe that. So I don't think it's a negative to say no to a project either. I just think it's not this project. I hope that it'll go into the hands of somebody who's better suited for it, and that another project that I can offer something to will come up, So part of that, like I said, is I think paying attention to whether or not the story resonates with you, the project resonates with you, and you feel like you can support it beyond just the practicalities of it being a project that can take care of the bills or whatever. Because most oftentimes it doesn't take care of the bills too much anyway. And it's your life and your time going into it. It should be something that you are hopefully fulfilling something else, like it has meaning to you. Yeah.
Excellent suggestion. So this resonance with the project, and also understanding what you can actually offer to it. And now transition to something that may be a little bit of and that's why touchy topic, right? So let's say that, yes, we decide to work for this project, but then how do we actually manage to get paid for what we are worth? And I would like to bring these questions to Shirley, if you have any advice on how to get paid what we are worth in doing the job.
So there's this is a faceted thing, and it could be a seminar all by itself, right? But it is a really important thing to number one, know what you're worth, right? And that's easier now than it used to be, because people used to be way more secretive about salaries, and that's becoming more transparent. And there, you know, because the internet, frankly, you can just go on websites and Google the job and find out how much people get paid. You can go on a Facebook group, you know, avid editors of Facebook, you know, and say, how much would you charge for this job, you know? And there's a lot of sharing of information these days. And so, so you kind of have to know your skill level, where you're at, what you're offering, and what people who are comparable to you are earning, right? For either if you're a freelancer as a day rate, or if you're applying for a full-time job, what's the salary for that job? So that's, you know, right away, you need to kind of do your research. Then you need to get comfortable talking about money. And again, it comes back to, you know, it's really, it was when I first started doing this, really hard for me to ask for money for Shirley Thompson. But I could ask for money for Shirley Thompson editorial, because somehow that little business wasn't going to make it if I didn't speak up and say, I charge this much, you know, and then just be comfortable saying it and don't flinch, you know. And then again, I think this is also a gendered topic, but we know that women make a lot less money than men, that young women and men coming out of college make comparable money. But within a very short period of time, a year or two, women make 10% less than their male counterparts doing the same job at the same education level. And then it's 20% less. And then for some groups like women of color, it's 30% less or 40% less. And the longer you get paid less than men, if you're female, it sets you up for a lifetime. Like, you won't have enough money to retire, you know, because you will never be able to save as much, because you will never make enough money to save. So you really have to always like pick a number and then add, you know, 10% to it, or ask for a little bit more money than you're comfortable with. I think everyone should just get in the habit of doing that, because chances are you're underestimating the amount of money, and you're asking for less than you're worth. And so I would just, like, whatever number comes to your mind, add 10 or 20% and ask for that. And a lot of times you'll get it and you'll go, oh, really? And I think that is really like something that, but you have to know that, like, once I ask for that money and I accept the job for that rate, then I got to deliver, right? It's like, then I have to show up, be a good worker, do a good job. Everybody's happy. And then everybody's like really happy they paid Shirley what she was worth, right? Because they got a really great product, a really great, you know, film edited or whatever they had hired me to do, right? So it starts off with knowing what's fair, being brave and getting confident and talking about money and asking for what you need. Because the thing is, if you're getting underpaid too, you're not going to be happy doing the work. Or you're going to have, you know, if you're getting underpaid, you're going to have to figure out a side hustle to make more money on the side somehow. And then you're going to be exhausted when you do your film work. So you really have to just know what that number is and ask for it.
Yeah, know your worth, ask for it. But also I see it as an educational point. You know, a lot of people that have no idea what it takes to make a film just think that it doesn't take long. And so I see also saying it as a moment of educating the other person. Just doesn't know how much it takes in terms of time and resources and everything else.
And life force.
A life force.
Yeah,
and so
I'm going to just jump in here because this one is a really key one. It's your survival, and it is you don't realize how fast life goes, and that you've been, you know, doing this project, not getting paid enough. But the part that I want to share is that there's a lot of projects here that I want to do with that organizations, for example, come to me, or that, you know, that there's messaging that I want to help an organization if they don't have the money. So, you know, there's this, you know, there's a certain amount of free projects, you know, that people come to you and they always ask you because they're your friends, or they know that, you know, you believe in this project, and you know that they can't tell that message without you giving them that time. So it's a give and take. But what I've learned late is that I only have like certain amount of freebies I give each year, because it costs so much money to do this kind of stuff. But it's true, everything that Shirley shared is true. I just think that, you know, when you create a budget, you make sure that you have an administrative fee that takes care of not just your salaries, but your business, and make sure that you know, that going forward that covers all the insurances and things like that. I think people keep forgetting about that going forward. And I mean, you have to think about your safety net and your savings net, and it's only fair in what we do and how we work.
Indeed. Yes, you all take this advice because it's really based on life and experience. And, you know, we are kind of sensing how intense it is to be a filmmaker. And this is why I would actually ask Erin, would you have any suggestion actually how to create like a boundaries, you know, because this is a word that can be like 24/7 nonstop, you know, and the more people know that you do it, the more they will ask, the more you want to do. So how do we, I don't know, how do you keep sane, or how do you try to stay sane in doing this, all of this?
And I'm probably the most naive, and so I'm sure everybody else can honestly answer this better than me, but I'm actually very bad at boundaries. But I think to some extent what I have learned that has helped, though, like to some extent I like that I felt flat on my face, because now I get it and I know how to do better, and I know how to advise better on that. But I guess the first thing I would say that was the most important part of it was to start to recognize that your self-worth and your value and what you have to contribute is not tied to the work. If a film doesn't work out, you're not suddenly like 5 degrees less of a person worthy of love and anything. And that took me a very long time to sort of embrace, but also that I still struggle with. Like if something in a project isn't working, or a project at my job doesn't work out, I still associate that with a problem with me. And so I do think the first key is just to start to separate those ideas, because the work is never going to always be going well. And if your mental state and health is going to always track with that, you're not going to have a very sustainable life, habit, career, anything. So I think it starts from there. But the other thing is also being aware that, yes, there's going to be seasons where you kind of have to put your head down, and like you're on that final stretch before picture lock, or, you know, there's those deadlines. But how often you do that needs to be balanced, because I think the more you can also treat yourself as, you know, if you're going to run at 10%, or you're not going to refill your cup, it's not going to help the work. And I think my concern with film culture to some degree before this was stress Olympics, that we sort of platform and praise auteurs who are willing to, oh, they haven't seen their family in 9 months and they work 36 hours and cigarettes and booze is their diet. And like there's this romanticized idea of that, but it's actually very terrible. It's not only bad for the health, but we also, like, film cannot be everything. You have families, you have community, you have other things that are important. And so I think there's also this just culture issue we have in the arts, that a starving, tortured artist that puts it all into the work is somehow the goal. And that's not true. And it shouldn't be praised. But So those are like the couple of things, and just setting the boundaries. If the clock hits this time, get away from your computer, take a walk. And I always joke to students, for the love of God, get a hobby that's not filmmaking. Get into ceramics, do woodwork, find something that has immediate satisfaction, because when you're developing projects, that goes on for months, whether you're in post, whether you're in writing. Finding something that can just give you a quick, like, I love cooking and my partner loves ceramics, and like that's how we kind of find a little bit of sanity in a career that involves very long timelines. So that was very all over the place. I apologize. There's just so many things I want to hit in this area, but I strongly suggest just start to walk that and really take it seriously as early as you can.
I hear you, Erin, and I appreciate you're saying, you know, this is what I would like to do, you know, the aspirational component, because it's a constant struggle. You know, there are maybe times when that works better and times where that works less better, but at least there is like the intentionality there, and just to be mindful of time. Yeah, the awareness, right? So I have just one more question, or like just to pull out of this wealth of knowledge and experience. Actually, any advice on how to keep and stay motivated throughout, you know, and I don't want to go like through the Olympics of stress, you know, like how to kind of like keep the work going, you know, any advice on, or maybe if you want to share what keeps you and make you stay motivated, and also how you keep motivating the people that you work with, you know, because we are kind of all affected, right? We are a team. Filmmaking is a teamwork. So once again, any advice on how to keep motivating yourself and the people that you work with? And this is open to anybody.
You know, I mean, as a freelancer, if I don't work, I don't eat or pay my bills. And so that's a strong motivation for me to kind of always sort of be out there and hustling and meeting filmmakers and talking to people, because it's just the reality. It's like, I don't have another job other than filmmaking. I've been really blessed and fortunate to be able to have a freelance career for that long. But I have to say the reality of that is, without having a staff job of any kind, that motivates me powerfully, is just to like go, okay, well, the coffers are getting kind of low. I guess I better go meet some filmmakers and find out who needs an editor out there.
Excellent, excellent. The reality of things. So if you want to enter this as a entrepreneur, that's the motivations, you know, you need to know that that's what you're getting into, and the motivation has to be strong throughout. Heather, would you like?
But it can also be about the message, you know? I mean, that could be a real motivating factor of a great project, a dream passion project that you want to do. And you have to talk other people into it too. The other people that you want to work with you. And so motivation is really key to keep people interested in the project that you think you believe, and you know that there's synergy with this team group. As Anne was saying earlier, you know, it's really important to pull the right team together. That is the secret sauce to the success of getting that project out the door, is that group of people that you get along with. Doesn't mean that you won't have disagreements and things that come up, but boy, is it nice to, it's just like, you know, it's a perfect thing that works. And at the same time, you have to constantly be the great cheerleader throughout, right? The money's coming, I promise. The money's coming. You know, something like that. If not that, you got to feed them.
I was just going to say, because I do work, like my day job is Jubilee Media, and they're wonderful, and I do get to create unscripted through them. But they're, you know, I could certainly just focus on that and not do scripted work anymore, and probably have so much more sleep in my life. But I keep pushing on the scripted end, one, coming back to the why am I doing this? But on the other level of like, I will say, be in the film industry because you love film, Like I get very excited and motivated when I just watch a great film. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I want to make something like this for home, or like I want to make the female version of this story. Or even when I listen to other creatives talk, like I'll get so hyped when I listen to like Bradford Young talk about, you know, the philosophy and poetry of his work. And so I think for myself, coming from that kind of circumstance, I think just great work drives me. It's like, this is so stunning and moving, and I want more of this, and I think I could do this in my community. So I don't know, turn on a good movie when on the hard days. That's what I do.
I hear, and I don't know, Anne, if you want to add anything or.
Actually, I think Erin hit it, because I was going to say, you know, get inspired by other references, but it's also, I'm hoping that if you're in the industry, that you're doing what you love. And if you love it, that will sustain you too. I think this is a difficult industry, largely because it's so much is project-based, right? And it's not like continuous for the rest of your life. In terms of working at one place necessarily, although some people do work at studios and such. But usually on the production side, it's project-based. So if you can find that aspect that you just love doing, I think that'll motivate you. I mean, there's, you know, it's just the idea of being on set is exciting to me. It's like, I love it. So, you know, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, for people who work in the crafts, there's an endless amount of things to learn, right? If you're in camera, or you're an editor, animator, you never stop learning. If you're a writer, you know, it's like there's always like something about your craft that drives you, that makes you want to, wow, I want to try that. That was cool what they did. I wonder how they did it. And you deconstruct, and you get inspired by just wanting to be better at your craft also.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the way to keep loving what you do, it's always going back to the source and be constantly inspired. And if I can adjust my own motivation drive is actually, I have two things, the young women that I work with, because it's when I see them doing what they love doing, it also re-energize me because of what we are all doing. So I want to give a shout out to all the girls that if they're listening, how they inspire me to keep the work that we do. And I know we have like a couple of minutes to answer some of the questions, and I'm not sure some are very detailed, but I would actually ask the very first one. Some of you at different points mentioned how the experience of being a filmmaker can be heartbreaking. And I'm asking if you can provide any specific example of this pitfall, but also where you came back, you know, because, you know, challenges becomes opportunities, maybe. So
let me count the ways, right, Heather?
Yeah, that's a nice way of looking at it. The challenges can be opportunities. Of course, that's, you know, one door opens another door.
After you cry and you're heartbroken.
Yeah, I mean, it's like filling out a horrible grant that you've been working on forever, and thinking it's actually a horrible in terms of the amount of work it takes to and focus it takes to do a grant. But then thinking, oh my God, this is a really great grant, you know, really great proposal. And then getting turned down and thinking, oh, you know, that's a little heartbreaking. But you know, it's pushing along a passion project that you just keep pushing and pushing, and years of pushing, and it's the whole it's 9 doors closing in your face, but it's the 10th door that's going to open up for you. There is always a door, you just haven't found it yet. You know, the simple as that.
Yeah, so it goes back to those soft skills of endurance, persistence, also recognizing when maybe it's the time to actually not pursue, you know, it goes back to what Anne was saying, you know, sometimes it may not be the right project for you. So
yeah, but I just want to say that this is the best time ever. I mean, with all the technology that's out there, and the gifts that we have, that people in this industry have, is creative. Even in this time of COVID, it has flourished with the creative, right? So, I mean, that's the gift that we have. That's our pathway forward always.
Excellent. And sorry if I'm just reading if there is any question. Okay, I'm just trying to make sure that I answer the question. Some are very detailed and about VR, virtual reality. If any of you has experience integrating films and animation in the same project and the process of morphing from one to the other. Anyone? I don't know if it applies to any of us.
Yeah, I don't know anything about VR, but it's other than having seen some cool ones at a festival, but
Cool. And maybe any suggestion of mentors or in films and animation in Maui? We are I mean, Erin is in Los Angeles, but we are in Oahu. So, you know, what I would suggest, and maybe this is something that I can answer, on Hawaii Women in Filmmaking website, we actually have a directory where women filmmakers actually share about their expertise, but also where they are located. So I would suggest to look at that. It's still a work in the making because it depends also how many people share, but I would suggest to look into the directory that we have on our website at hawaiiwomeninfilmmaking.org, just to see who's doing what and where.
I can't think of any. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, what I've mentioned to other filmmakers and students, like when you don't necessarily have a point of contact that does that craft, I've mentioned them to a student before, go to like films that have shot in Hawaii, particularly local films, watch the credits, find the person who does exactly what you want to do, find them. Like go on LinkedIn, go to Facebook and ask if they have time to talk. The worst you can get is a no, but I do find that as a good resource to find the names first that are doing what you want to do and do it well, and then see if they're open to, luckily we have Zoom coffee now, so nobody needs to drive anywhere and it's less of a ask, but that's been helpful for some of the students and even myself at times.
Excellent. And it looks like my watch is already 1:59. So we are close to the hour. And what I want to do at this point is really thank you all for all that you have shared today, for your time, your knowledge, your experience and expertise. It's very much appreciated, and I'm extremely grateful that you spend this time with us. So really, thank you, Anne. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Shirley. And I just have a short message to conclude today's webinar. So, and this is actually as an answer to one of the questions that was in the chat. So Creative Lab Hawaii continues celebrating Women History Month in March with a conversation with Indigenous Wahine storytellers on Saturday, March 20 at 1 p.m. Hawaii time. And the webinar is co-sponsored by Good Pitch Local Hawaii. And you can visit creativelab.hawaii.gov for more information and the registration link. So something is coming up by the end of this month as well. So you may want to register for that. And on behalf of Hawaii Women in Filmmaking and the State of Hawaii DBAD Creative Industry Divisions, mahalo nui and have a great rest of your day. Aloha.